Hi everyone, welcome to my next video entitled What Do You Want From a Drummer? Today I have the pleasure of interviewing Pete Oxley, a guitarist, composer, arranger and band leader. Pete's performed with Nigel Kennedy, John Etheridge and Randy Brecker, to name just a few. He's toured Europe extensively and now he splits his time between playing guitar with various ensembles, running his own band, Hejira, which plays the music of Joni Mitchell, and also running an award-winning jazz club in Oxford named The Spin. So with all this experience of different drummers, I can't wait to hear what Pete has to say. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and let's get straight to the interview. Hi Pete.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us today. Really what we want to get to is I'm interviewing all different musicians to find out what they look for in a drummer. Because I think as drummers, we all practice rudiments and stuff at the kit, but drummers very rarely employ drummers.
Right.
So I think it's really interesting to get the perspective of other musicians, as you know, what they're interested in.
Yeah.
So before we get into that, can you just tell us a bit about your background and kind of, you know, how you've come to work with drummers, whether it's through the studio or live or, you know, as a booker?
Yeah. Really through live, actually, you know, so my experience of playing, as soon as I started playing with bands and using drummers, you know, it was in my teens playing in rock bands. And then I didn't really know much about it. And I didn't know how to be discerning about a drummer, for some time. And I remember, the first two groups that I was interested in were the Rolling Stones for the kind of rebellious rock and roll element. And then because I came from a classical music background, bands like Emerson, Lake and Palmer who could really play, you know, like serious high level players, including Carl Palmer, who seemed to have phenomenal technique, incredible clarity to his playing, alongside all the kind of power. You know, he had just had this phenomenal stuff going on. I had no idea what he was doing there, but I liked it. And so when I started to play in bands, the first drummer in the first sort of seriously good band I had when I was probably 18, he was I think he was 14 at the time, and he was kind of like, he was the best guy in the band.
Okay.
And we were all 18-ish around then, and we had gone from playing covers of bands like the Stones, Led Zeppelin, Free, you know, all those kind of 70s bands, like rock bands, to we got into Genesis, into early Genesis, and the whole kind of prog thing. And then we started to become aware, or I should speak for myself, you know, became really aware of how it sounded much more orchestrated, that music, than kind of, you know, regular three-piece, four-piece bands. So I started listening. Well, let's take the example of Genesis, to Phil Collins in his early days.
Yeah.
And I became aware of the subtlety that was going on the snare drum and the playing around the kit, you know, the sound of it as an instrument, the whole thing, as one instrument blending together. So then later, you know, just to carry on with a brief synopsis, when I you know, I was doing this as kind of amateur thing, playing with those bands. And then when I moved to Paris, when I got serious about doing music, and I started gigging, I came to it quite late, really, gigging. I was kind of in my mid-20s.
Sure.
And, you know, professionally. And by then I was sort of getting into jazz. So, and then I started to develop a kind of taste for players. First of all, I didn't really understand what made a great swing player back then. I just didn't have the experience to know what constituted a good swing feel, you know? And quite quickly, when I got into, after gigging and sort of trying to get my chops together, I got into a kind of like an equivalent of prog in the jazz world. So more of a kind of fusiony thing. And I started listening to, you know, Weather Report and Pat Metheny Group and Schofield and all these guys. And of course, those drummers, hardly anybody was playing swing. None of those bands really ever play swing. So they're all playing straight eights grooves. And I was quite attracted to all those great drummers, that played in that way. First of all, I would say I was attracted to people like Dave Weckl and those people who played in a very clinical, crisp, you know, brilliantly virtuosic way. And then as I gradually became more involved in writing that kind of music, I found that I wanted something more open and more spacious, still in a straight eights groove. So then my taste went more to people like Erskine and Will Kennedy,
Yeah.
people like that. Then, you know, I got into the Pat Metheny group, and likewise, the very early incarnation of that with Danny Gottlieb on drums, who was playing pretty much exclusively straight eight stuff, but it had this kind of a certain acoustic quality to it still.
Okay.
That I didn't find in the Weckels and Gad and.
Are there any particular albums or recordings that really show that?
Well,
that come to mind?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I would say Travels by the Pat Metheny group, which is live, and it's Danny Gottlieb before Paul Wertico joined the group.
Sure.
And it's just got this lovely open feel to it on the kit. I mean, he's still a tight drummer. His time is great and everything, but it's got, you know what I mean? This kind of, it's much more acoustic sounding with drums than those other guys I mentioned. And that appealed much more to my sensibilities of what I was doing in the music I was writing, because I was starting to write music in that more kind of textural way. And hence also then enjoying the merge between drums and percussion, and people that in a way played drums and sort of some more kind of percussion type instruments. And like one of the most developed bands I had of playing that kind of music was a group called Curator's Paradise. And our drummer, Russ Morgan, who you met, he had quite a lot of actual percussion stuff involved in his kit. And it was just great, just the colour that percussion plays. And as you know, how much I enjoy having you in the Hejira band for the colour that it brings to it. So that's the thing I'm looking for, even in a drummer that doesn't have any percussion stuff. It's somebody that still colours the band, as well as just producing a tight groove.
That leads quite nicely into the next question, which is kind of what musical traits do you look for in a drummer? And I know you run Hejira, you've got your own other musical projects, you run a jazz club, so there's lots of different pockets. Do you want the same thing across the board, or does it really depend on?
No, it does depend a bit on the context, but of course, my taste is my taste. So I do tend to like. So what am I looking for in a drummer? I like somebody who it's very much the sound of the kit, rather than Chop's ability. So, for example, one of the drummers that I've enjoyed most of all, who's been to the Spin, was Jeff Ballard. So Jeff, I remember this gig, and I knew he was a kind of an A-lister drummer, though I didn't know a great deal about his playing at that time. And what I loved was he played the whole gig just playing groove and time, and with this feel and sound, which was so noticeable to me. Nothing flamboyant at all, until he did one drum solo at the end, and then you could see he could do anything. As a drummer, and that's what I like. So primarily, how is somebody going to, on the kit, they're going to colour the music? How they're going to contribute to the orchestration of the music? So the snare drum sound is really important. Something crisp, and I mean, of course, that goes with their ability to play with a touch. Also, cymbals are really important to me, which you've probably heard.
I was going there.
So cymbals. To generalize, I don't like a very crashy sound. I like quite a dry sounding cymbal on the ride. That propels the group, and hence I like Paul Wertico when he replaced Danny Gottlieb in the Pat Metheny group. He's got so many cymbals, but it seems like a lot of them are flat rides of one sort of another, very dry sounding, and
very
this
precise.
Precise, that really, and that I think from Paul's perspective, or his way of drumming, a lot of it is propelled from the rides from the cymbals rather than snare and kick. And I like that. I just like that sound. That's the top of the band, really riding on top of the band. So does that answer that question?
Yeah. Whatever you think, So, I mean, going on from the musical traits, what about non-musical things?
Well, they've got to be nice people. Don't argue with me when I'm a band leader. No. Actually, I mean, as a band leader, and a lot of my work is as a band leader. it's super important to have a communication channel open all the time.
Yeah.
So, you know, in the group that we're involved in with Rick, I can always say anything to Rick and he'll take it on board.
Yeah, sure.
And he might discuss it, and which is completely fine because I'm not a drummer. But if I give him some guidance, usually Rick will come up with something and go, yeah, that's exactly what I had in mind.
Sure.
And that's great. And that you can only really do with somebody you're comfortable with on a personality level. So that's really important.
Following on from the kind of non-musical things, have you got particular instances that you can remember from your career where the drummers have done specific things that have really caught your ear? And, you know, maybe drummers you can tell us about, or you can explain what was going on.
Yeah, well, actually, I can remember the young drummer in the rock band that I was in when we were about 18, and he, as I said, he was about 14, and he would do this stuff sort of between the kick drum and the snare that would just always make me look across and go, yeah, that's great. And I think he was quite into Phil Collins at the time.
Right.
And as I mentioned to you earlier, I was remembering, so there are a lot of instances on records that I can go back years and years, and I remember those moments, and they're still, if I put them on now, I still go, yeah, that's a moment. So, for example, well, let's speak of Phil Collins in a very early Genesis on the album Nursery Crime. Just towards the end of the song The Musical Box, there's a part where the whole thing is kind of calmed down and it's building up again, and Phil is doing this stuff on the snare, and he's doing these kick syncopations with the snare, and they're just like, I love it every time.
Yeah,
they're wonderful moments, and there's another one which I know I've mentioned, and I think a lot of people, drummers particularly, like this. And it's in Steely Dan's Asia album on the song Josie.
Yep.
Just before I think the last verse comes back, there's this little break on the snare, and it's so simple, but it's so beautifully placed. It's like a moment.
Sure.
It's like one of my favorite things on the record.
Oh, great.
And it's just like half a bar.
Yeah.
You know, but these things, and this is what I love with drummers, when they can do something that just, you know, it's just a gorgeous thing.
What about on your own gigs?
Well, I mean, I can't say there's any specific moments. I mean, well, apart from just recently, because it's fresh in my mind.
Sure.
At the end of Just Like This Train,
yeah,
when we're building up the outro, and we've always kind of built it up, but it felt like there was something missing, and I said to Rick, can you just play around this a little bit? And he doesn't go fusoid mad.
Yeah.
But he does this lovely stuff with the snare drum. And like last night, in fact, I turned around to him, yeah, that's it. And those are moments again. You know, yeah, they just stick in the mind. And I know, you know, there've been many in the past. So I play with Paul Cavaciuti.
Right.
He plays in the band I have with Nick Meyer, the Oxley Meyer Guitar Project. And yeah, there will always be at some point in the gig something which is just that surprises me, and that's a lovely thing, you know, especially in the jazz context, because you want to be surprised all the time, and you know, for the listeners as well. I mean, not like, oh my god, what they're doing, but
yeah,
you know what I mean. It's just like this lovely thing. Like, where did that come from?
Sure.
And Paul certainly delivers that to me from time to time.
So do you have, going along that line, do you have different drummers that you might book for different types of gig? And can you tell us what they, you know, what it is they do? I mean, if we can entertain this for a while, if you had a straight ahead swing gig,
yeah,
who might be your first call and why?
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. So running the spin, and I've been doing the house band for 20 plus years.
Yeah,
now.
so this is perfect.
So yeah, so hiring a lot of different drummers, and indeed I look at who the guest is or what the band is I put together for that gig, and try and hire somebody appropriately. So the straight ahead swing gig, I quite often call Rod Young's.
Yeah.
Because he's just got this lovely feel.
Yeah.
Again, very, very, very relaxed. Spot on, and a nice sound, quite a different sound to the sounds I was doing. So his cymbals are much darker. But in that context, it kind of works for me because it's filling a certain sound, sort of, part of the spectrum, the sound spectrum. And just he's a lovely guy to work with as
Yeah.
well. So again, going back to that thing of a non-musical factor being really important and coming into it.
You work with another drummer, Sophie Alloway,
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
Tell us why do you book Sophie?
Well, Sophie, she's great. First of all, again, the personality, she's very nice to work with. Secondly, I find that she totally covers all the bases of styles. Her swing feel is great, and if we're playing something in the straight eights groove and it requires chops, she's got plenty of them, and she sounds great. And it's again, it all kind of catches me out. She's playing, this incredibly relaxed, kind of almost nothing moves, and then these things come out, which are just like, wow,
Yeah.
that's great. So she's really nice. I've used Paul at the Spin, Paul Cavatucci again, for more more in the Erskine kind of thing. So Paul, with the Oxley Meyer band, that's all straight eight stuff again. There's no swing feel in that at all. It's quite world music-esque. And Paul, so he's got the kind of, the straight eights experience, fan of Erskine. And he's also got that acoustic sound to his kit. It's definitely not like a dry drum, kick drum. So he's great for bands more in that style. Winston Clifford, I've used Winston.
Yeah, Winston's great.
So Winston, he's just like so musical. So he's another great one for straight ahead. Although I'm sure Winston can play anything, but it's so. It's very much, going back to what I was saying about colouring the band.
Yeah.
I would think about what the music is, and also that the drummer I'm hiring will enjoy that music.
Sure.
Because of course that's going to make them play better if they're loving the music. So something more textural. I mean, Russ Morgan, he lives far away. He lives in Scotland now, actually.
Sure. Yeah.
He was really great for that kind of ECM vibe because he loved that music, so he had all that kind of textural stuff down.
Fantastic. Yeah. Last one, bit of a controversial one, but what do you think drummers should spend more time working on? From a non-drummer's point of view,
well, for me, it really is sound and thinking about the sound of the band and should they be bringing crashy cymbals, right cymbals to a gig where that's just going to get in the way. And I do find that quite a lot. I think, this would be much better with a drier ride. So for me, in a way, the last thing is flamboyant chops.
Yeah.
I mean, great chops so it's got great time, and then that's going to bring the feel. So you can't do that without great chops.
Yeah.
But not like soloing chops. I mean, there's one gig I went to which kind of put me off fusion years ago. Famous drummer who I won't mention, but you'll probably figure it out. And it was this fusion band, and like the drummer was soloing through absolutely everything.
Sure. Okay.
It's like, God, I was just knackered. And I'd never seen so many people leave before an encore of a gig of famous people. They were all famous people. It was kind of like a thrown together band for a jazz festival in Paris. 6 people, all big names. And about a third of the audience left because it was just like you were bombarded all the time. And so for me, I'm kind of the antithesis of that in what I'm looking for in a drummer. And so if I find drummers who come and sit down and just make the thing sounds beautiful, like I said right at the beginning about Jeff Ballard, because that's what he did just all night. And he played his stuff only when it was appropriate.
Yeah.
But otherwise he was playing utterly appropriately to the band, so it was integrated with the band because quite often I find drummers don't sound integrated with the band.
Okay.
They're doing their own thing.
Yeah.
And it's really that they're doing their own thing. I don't find that an enjoyable experience either as a listener or as a player. Because as a player, you want in small group ensembles, of course, the whole thing has to be a conversation. And if the drummer has got this sort of dominating attitude, then it's no fun. And I think that communicates as well to the audience, subconsciously to a lot of people. It's like it's not an as one sound that's coming off the
Sure.
stage.
Yeah.
So yeah, if that's a reasonable answer to the question,
That's great. Yeah.
What I hope, if somebody asked me, as you just have done, what I would like drummers to practice more, work on more, it would be that, yeah, working on what makes the sound great. And for me, a lot of it is the snare drum. All the filigree stuff that drummers do with the snare. It creates this kind of carpet, and that's what I like. A kind of carpet of sound that's going along underneath the band and behind the band.
Sure.
And that in context with the ride cymbal, and then a drummer is a wonderful thing.
Excellent. That's brilliant.
Great.
Thanks very much for joining us.
Yes,
That's great.
pleasure.
Thanks, Pete.